Thanks, Rico. I also hope that I get a lot of Lego under the tree this year, but I guess that remains to be seen. We'll find out next week if I got any Lego
Which kid are
sets.
you?
So,
Which kid are you wishing for? Are you writing to Santa about?
there's just too many. But there are these tiny plants that just came out. There's a Sonic Lego or Sonic the Hedgehog Lego set series coming up in March. There's a whole Animal Crossing line dropping, so a lot of dollars will be spent on Lego in the coming months. So.
Animal Crossing line. Is that like a railroad crossing line, but for animals?
Animals.
It's a video game, probably that you would have no interest in, Jason.
Got it. Okay, all right.
I know what you're talking about.
So, my story this week, will Congress pass marijuana reform? DC insiders have thoughts. With whispers of rescheduling and cannabis banking making waves across the country, many people predict real progress on weed in the coming months. However, a recent poll of Washington insiders may burst this bubble. Punchbowl News asked legislative staff in D.C. whether they believed Congress would pass substantial marijuana reform before the end of their term next year. Approximately 71% of respondents said it was unlikely. Since these legislative aides and chiefs of staff are the people who do the lion's share of work for lawmakers, their insights are likely closer to fact than speculation. Punchbowl News also asked K Street lobbyists the same question, but their responses were a bit more uncertain. About 59% thought marijuana reform was likely, while 23% thought or said they didn't know. Only 10% of Capitol Hill staffers were unsure on the topic. Employees of Republican lawmakers were more pessimistic about cannabis than their Democratic counterparts. Roughly 83% of GOP staffers said reform was unlikely, compared to 59% of Democrats. However, around 29% of Democrats polled thought cannabis reform was likely. Only 9% of Republicans felt the same way. The partisan divide was less stark among lobbyists. In fact, 21% of GOP lobbyists said that marijuana reform was likely, compared to only 16% of Democrats. Considering the majority of these political power brokers were hesitant to chime in on the subject, the contrast between their opinions and those of actual legislative staff adds up. The poll did not address the recommendation to move cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. That decision is ultimately in the hands of the Drug Enforcement Agency, not Congress. Washington insiders are more optimistic about that change, believing the DEA will indeed reschedule cannabis in the lead up to the 2024 election. And while the majority of states have approved some type of cannabis reform, the call for federal marijuana legalization is getting louder by the day. Despite the pessimism by congressional staffers, it appears that some type of change is coming soon. We're just not sure where it's going to come from. So I'm curious, what do you guys think? Do you think that Congress will have any significant marijuana reform in this term? Are they going to pass safe banking, or are these legislative aides and interns correct?
Well, first, the legislative aides, I found it extremely funny that all of the Democratic aides are super optimistic that they're actually going to get something done, but the Republicans seemed more in step with reality that ain't nothing getting done.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And the Democrats are in control, so they could do it.
Leading that for nothing to get done, are they not?
Say that again, Rico.
I said the Republicans are leading the movement for nothing to get done, are they not?
No, that's not true. Just wait till my last story and you'll see why. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I don't think anything is going to get past Rochelle. I think it's a great story. I think it's a great question to ask. It's just status quo, and
it's just why it's the carrot with the donkey.
Mm-hmm.
It's the carrot with the donkey. It's just dangling the carrot. That's all he's doing is dangling the carrot.
Carrot danglers, huh? Mm-hmm.
They like to dangle.
Real dangly carrots. Oh, man.
The system is real slow to change, and if you don't have a real firm idea of what you're going to do, the system's not going to allow this. And my story yesterday about the prosecutors, the DEA is not going to like this. You get pushback from all over the country in the law enforcement policy area that doesn't want this to happen. And on, the people that want reform the most don't want to be pragmatic about having to deal with law enforcement, and law enforcement just have its head up its ass about the realities that people want to smoke weed.
You're very
so there
right.
we are.
So right about that, Dale.
You know what? Because marijuana allows them the only illegal right to violate your Fourth Amendment because of its smell. And by them saying that they can smell it, it allows them to then infringe on your rights. And this is the reason why, look, there is no, I don't want people watching this, and I don't want to go too far off of the topic, but for everyone watching this, make no mistake, it's both sides. They're both in it to the same. It's good cop, bad cop, and some days they just pick sides on who's going to be the good cop and the bad cop. And no, it's not everyone on the left, and no, it's not everyone on the right, but consequently, it's the most powerful people on both sides that are doing it to us. So we're not going to see a lot of things happen. And the reason why we're not is because you and I, the people watching, we haven't sat down, come together, and said enough's enough. We're adults, and we can make up our own minds for ourselves. And this is what we want you to do. You work for us. Stop telling us what we're going to have and start doing what we want you to do.
Yeah, and a lot of part too with what you're saying, Tony, is a big part of that is the fractionalization within the cannabis space, is that the cannabis operators can't get onto the same page as to what they want either. They hear one thing from MSOs, they hear one thing from criminal justice groups, they hear a whole other thing from workforce and everything, and so they're getting all of these different mixed messages and not one consensus, unanimous. Hey, this is the way that we need to go.
Congress could have been did something. Everyone could have been, like I said, it's good cop, bad cop, and it's going to remain that way because they're always going to need something to distract us with and to keep a conversation going. And as far as the law enforcement thing is concerned, it's so they can violate your rights. I'm not going to be somebody that's going to sit here and be like, oh, I blindly back the blue. I support great, good cops that stand for the Constitution, but consequently, there are a lot of people who are in law enforcement that want to circumvent your constitutional rights, and saying I smell marijuana is a great way to do so.
That part.
We call them tools, Tony, and I use it as a pejorative term because the tools are, if we smell weed, we now have probable cause to detain you, to search you, get search warrants, and that they didn't like giving that up. In California, they had to retire a shitload of drug dogs because they were trained to alert to marijuana. And if they alerted anything else, they could not be used in court. And the cops just lost their minds over that. Look what you're doing to us. Yeah. Well, how about what you've done to us? I mean, Tony, if they pack your ass up and send you to prison, they've done something to you. Okay.
Exactly.
And if it's for reasons that are
they never get packed up and get sent to prison. When you go online and you see how horrific these beatings are, when you go online and you see the things that are happening, and you see they get suspended sentences, 4 months. I don't want to talk about it. This is just ridiculous. I'm gonna get triggered behind it. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, yeah. I mean, when you've been there, it's like, this ain't funny. These are real consequences. And
Facts.
People that smoke weed, unless you really do something to danger somebody else, smoking weed, I mean, why is that my right? I'm a human being. If that makes me feel better and I ain't going anywhere out of my house, I ain't fucking with nobody, I ain't driving a car, endangering anybody, why can't I do that?
You mean to tell me I could walk into a gas station in any store, buy a pack of cigarettes that has over 200 chemicals that are known to cause cancer inside of them, and inhale this all day long, no matter how many times I want, because it's perfectly legal for me to poison myself with this pure poison, but I can't grow my own marijuana and smoke my own marijuana because I have post-traumatic stress disorder, because you threw me in a prison cell that you would lock a human up for if they had an animal living in the same conditions?
Exactly right. Exactly right.
See, that's the downside that you don't get from the law enforcement, is that there's a cost for their policies. And they dehumanize people that they claim, you committed crimes. Well, these are what we call malum prohibitum crimes. They're only wrong because at some point society decided we're going to make it against the law. Okay, well, they can decide to make it not against the law. But once they do this and the systems get in place, it is very hard to undo these laws. And you see them. Cops don't like it because they're their tools. Prosecutors, they're tools. They can hold it. I mean, I had a 5-year minimum mandatory held over my head for growing a little over 100 plants in 3 fucking years. Like, I'm going to prison for 5 years for that? Where's the gun to your head? People cop pleas all the time, and the law enforcement calls them tools. Well, in California, the people said, fuck this. We're going to make growing weed a misdemeanor soaking wet. It's the cop's office. Like, we don't want people going to prison for weed anymore because it shouldn't be that way. And that's what it's going to take. The people are going to have to take this back because politicians, unless you make it worth their while, they're not going to do this. Cops aren't going to do this.
Yep.